welcome back to another video. So yesterday in my Facebook group, I put up a post asking y'all for video ideas, and I do this every once in a while, and I always keep a log or a notebook of all of the ideas that you all give me, and I sort of go down that list and I use that list to create videos. So if you have any video ideas or anything you would like to see, please feel free to go ahead and put those down in the comments below. But Megan Marks had responded, and a lot of people agreed, and they wanted to see how I go about coloring a page that has a lot of detail, or a page that is more intricate, has a lot of small spaces, and is just very, very busy. And so that is what we are going to talk about today. And the other evening I actually just started coloring a page in here, so I thought, why not bring the book out and discuss the page that I started coloring and talk about how I go about not being overwhelmed when I look at a page that has all of those intricate details on it. Everything that you see me use in this video will be in the description box below, as well as links down there for my Facebook group if you would like to join us there, my email list, my Etsy shop, and my Patreon if you would like to support me there. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about how to make this much less overwhelming. I know that so many people are very overwhelmed by this book in particular. Hopefully by the time you're done watching this video, you can use all of the little tips that I give you, and you can tackle a page in this book yourself, making it much less overwhelming. So my first suggestion would be to just sort of flip through the book and find a page in the book that is not as overwhelming as some of the others. So when you look at it, you are able to pinpoint exactly what you want to start coloring first. And maybe you're automatically inspired by the page and you're already thinking what colors you can apply to certain objects on the page. So for instance, this page here is a double page spread, and within this book you're going to find lots of double page spreads. And I think that is what makes it extremely overwhelming. When somebody looks at this book, they see a lot more going on than there really is. And I think that a lot of the black lines contribute to that as well. I would suggest on any of the double page spreads in this book that you just choose one side and start with that side, and the other side, while you're coloring, I would just take a piece of paper and I would just lay a piece of paper over it so that it's not making your mind all boggled and you're seeing all of the other busyness that's going on the other side of the book or on the other page. But there are quite a few pages in this book that are less busy than others. And when I first started coloring in this book, that is exactly what I did. I went right for the pages that had a lot less going on, or at least I thought they had a lot less going on, and the pages that inspired me and made me want to sit down and color them. I tabbed in this book a couple of the pages that I colored first. This was the very first page I ever colored in this book, and I had a really fun time coloring this page. And I did think that I messed up on the snake, and I really didn't like how that turned out. But I continued with the page, and in the end, I really loved how it all came together. Here for the background of the globe, I decided I wanted to divide it up in two different colors, and then I made the two different sides of the tree the alternating colors from what was on either side. And so it's really important to get a little bit creative and make your pages a little bit more fun, even if they are a page that can be a little bit more overwhelming. When you're having fun and you're really enjoying yourself and you're able to just relax and put something together, it tends to take away some of that overwhelm, and it takes your mind off the fact that the page is pretty busy. And then out here, I decided to be a little more creative again, and I might even have a video on this, I don't know. I colored this page long ago when I first started my YouTube channel, but I put a gray shadow back here around the globe just to make it look like it was a little bit elevated and a little 3D and sort of standing off the page. And then I used, I think, Jane Davenport pastels just to do the background, and I thought the pink looked really pretty and sort of brought everything together. I really wanted to make sure that I was creating some sort of balance on the page after I colored everything, and because I had some things here that were pink, I wanted to put pink on the outside so that it just brought everything together. This is the second page that I ever colored in this book, and I had so much fun coloring this. Now, when I tackled this page, and I decided I wanted to color it. I believe that this was when I first started my Facebook group, and I think it was sort of a color along, but I didn't do a whole lot of videos to it. A lot of people wanted to see the color combination for all of the petals on the flower, and so I did do a video on that if I could find it. I think it was actually one of my very first YouTube videos, so if I could find that, I'll link it in the upper right hand corner. But I absolutely loved this page, and what I did when I was coloring this page is I just decided, okay, what is the focal point of the page? So the focal point of the page for me would have been this gorgeous flower. And I did try to stay within some sort of color palette on this page. You could probably tell by looking at it. I've got lots of greens and blues and reds and oranges all throughout here on the fair, and then I sort of brought those colors out so that I could add the same colors to the butterflies just to create balance on the page. But when I first got this book, I will admit that it did create a little bit of overwhelm for me as well, because a lot of the pages do have a whole lot going on. But once you sit down and you start to color one of these pages, you will see that it's not as bad as you think it is. I do also want to say that I find that the Prismacolors work absolutely wonderful in this book. I've tried several other pencils in this book, and I always go back to my Prismacolors when I'm coloring in this book because they just seem to work the absolute best. So the other night I decided to pull out this book, and I've been wanting to color this page for quite some time because I had this idea in my head that I wanted to make a fiery looking apple. And I think I was able to accomplish that. Before you start your page, you can see that we have a whole lot going on, and that's because you're looking at the book as a whole. And so if you just take a piece of paper and cover up the other page, you're not seeing it anymore. And it really does help to take away a lot of that overwhelm when you're looking at all of the busyness on the page. So again, when I was flipping through the book, I decided I wanted to color something in the book that was a little bit easier and didn't necessarily have so much going on. Of course, this one that is over here has a whole lot going on, but you can make that a whole lot easier if you just learn how to get your brain to think in sections when you're looking at the page. So I will cover up the other side, and that's what I did the other night when I started coloring, because I just don't want to see that side over there. All of that busyness and the two pages together do create a little bit of overwhelm. So I looked at this page and I just asked myself, okay, what do I want to be the focal point of the page? And of course that would be this apple here in the center. And so I decided I wanted to create a fiery apple, because when the page is done and I'm looking at it, I want it to really stand out. I want this apple here and the top part of the apple to really stand out and catch somebody's eye. Now the first thing I did is, you can see that over here I was testing out some colors. This was actually my sheet that I was testing out the colors first before I brought them to my coloring page. Always test out your colors before you lay anything down. And of course I only started with, I think, 3 colors, and by the time I was done with this, I actually had way more. And I'll show you the colors that I used, because they are laying over here, and I'm actually gonna show you how I colored it and the reason that a lot of the pages in this book are not as overwhelming as they may seem. Let me go ahead and go over the colors first. So I have dark brown, and I use this dark brown just for all of the drastic shadows that I wanted to create all here on the outside, and I used that to actually go over the Crimson Lake. The Crimson Lake is what I was using first to create those shadows, but for me it wasn't dark enough, and so I went over it with the dark brown and I sort of blended those two together. For my highlights I used Spanish orange. I came back later and I added some neon yellow because I really wanted it to pop. And then for my shades of orange, to create that really fiery look, I used permanent red and orange. And this permanent red, this is a beautiful color, and put together with the orange, it really creates that deep, vibrant red. So I zoomed you in a little bit here because I'm going to show you how I went about coloring this. And after I color a little bit of this in, then I'm going to show you how I would have gone about choosing the colors for some of these leaves, and we're probably going to color in some of those leaves as well. And you'll notice that I'm really not choosing a color palette, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to choose my colors. We'll get into that as we get a little bit further into the video. I'm going to start laying down some of the permanent red and the orange. I want to show you why this book is not necessarily as overwhelming as you may think when you first start looking at it. So all of these lines in here, I always try to use all of those lines as a guide, just like I would when I'm coloring grayscale. As you can see, I'm laying this color. This is the permanent red, and I'm laying this color over the lines and just going in the direction of those lines. And that really tends to make it a lot less overwhelming. And I'm going to do that through the whole top of this apple. And this is just my first layer. As you can tell with the bottom portion of the apple, you can tell that there is a whole lot of layers down on the paper. And so this is going to be just my very first light starting layer. I just want to get some of this color down here in the areas that I want it. Now I'm going to come back with the orange, and I'm just going to fill in some of the spaces right around where I laid that permanent red. And like I said earlier, these colors look really beautiful together. And once I come back and start adding some of the other colors, you're really going to just see all the colors come together and create that really fiery looking red color. I'm making sure that I also leave space to come back and add my highlight colors. So I think I'm going to stop right about there, and I'm going to grab my Spanish orange, and I'm going to start laying down some of the Spanish orange and blending it in here to these other colors. When I did the bottom portion, I did come back at the end with the neon yellow because I wanted it to really pop. But I think here for this top part, I might come back and add that neon yellow a lot sooner, because I think here on the top, I want there to be a lot more highlighted areas. So I'm gonna lay some neon yellow all down in here. I love this color. I've been using my neons a lot more often. I just actually shared a bunch of color combinations for leaves in a video where I used my neon colors. I'll link that in the upper right hand corner if you would like to see that. But you could see I'm just sort of using the lines and letting them guide me as to where I'm laying the colors. I'm going to use my Crimson Lake, and I'm going to just follow the lines so that we could really make some of those stand out. And as I lay this color down, you'll see what a huge difference that makes. Now I'm going to turn my book so I could come back the other way. Don't ever be afraid to turn your book as you're coloring, because you really need to be able to get the right angle. Oh, if y'all knew how much I had to change my coloring style and the way I color since starting YouTube and making videos. It's very difficult to make sure everyone can see what you're doing and still be able to stay at the right angle so that I could be comfortable. Let's go ahead and come back and blend in some of that permanent red. And these two colors, the permanent red and that Crimson Lake, they are just gorgeous together. All of these colors are gorgeous together. Like I said, they create that beautiful, really fiery red look. Now I'm going to switch back to my Crimson Lake and get a few more layers down here of this color. And I'm really going to start to try to create some of those shadows that's really going to make this pop. Now I have my Spanish orange, and I'm going to start blending some of this color right into these other colors. Again, I'm going to turn my book so I can come in over here and really get some of that color down. And I'm using a little bit harder pressure now because I really want to be able to get some of that color down on the page. I'm making sure I get a lot of that white space filled in. Now I'm going to come back and add some more orange and blend out these colors. And it's really a blend of all of these colors that create that fiery red look. I have my Spanish orange, and I just sharpened it to make sure that I can really get that color in the smaller spaces. It's always important to have sharp leads on your pencils, especially when you're trying to get that color in between all of these little spaces where all of these lines are. But I do want a lot more highlights up here on the top part of the apple than I had down on the bottom part of the apple. I want them to look just a little bit different, so I'm using a lot more of my lighter colors. And you can see that all I'm doing is I'm just following those lines that are already there for me, and it makes it so much easier. Now I have my neon yellow, and I'm really starting to bring some of these colors together now. Now it's time to grab that dark brown, and this is the color that I used at the end so that I could really intensify those shadows. And I want to make sure that I have a very sharp lead on the tip of my pencil. And now I'm going to come in here and just really intensify all of the areas where I want it to have a more drastic shadow. And look at the difference this makes. And I will come back and go over this with the Crimson Lake because I want it to look red and not necessarily look brown. It's a blend of those two colors. And I'm going to come down here and do this side. And you could see I'm still using those lines. And that is why I really love Kerby's artwork, because you've got those lines there to use as your guide. And a lot of people look at them like they're overwhelming, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming. And it's the same with grayscale. So many people look at grayscale and they get very overwhelmed, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming. You just use the grayscale as a guide and it shows you exactly where to lay your colors. Now let's come back and use that Crimson Lake and let's blend it into some of that dark brown. And now it's starting to look a lot more like the bottom, and it's starting to get that really fiery red look. And I did go out of the lines there just a little bit, but y'all know if you have your mono eraser, don't ever worry about going out of the lines because it is always fixable. I'm really using a lot more pressure and I'm trying to really get that color down there on the paper. Go ahead and come back and add in some more of those highlights and blend some of these colors in. And anywhere I see any of the white of the paper, I'm adding this neon yellow. Up here on the back part of the apple where I would imagine that it would be much more shadowed, I'm going to use my darkest colors and I'm just going to fill this in really quickly. And I'm going to do the same thing with the dark brown, and I'm just going to follow those lines. And then I think for the top portion of it, we'll go ahead and add this permanent red here. And I'm just going to add a little bit because I do want a couple little highlights in there. Now I have the sunburst yellow. I grabbed my mono eraser. If y'all haven't seen this in any of my videos previously, this is the Tombow Mono Zero eraser, and it's fabulous. Right here where I went out of the lines a little bit, I'm just going to come in here and pull that up. Red is a little bit harder to pull up off your coloring page, but that's okay because when I come back and I do a background on here, I'm really excited to use my pan pastels on it and come back and do a background. So when I come back and I do that, you won't even notice that I went out of the lines there. I went and grabbed my color wheel because I want to show you how I am going to go about choosing colors for this page, and this will make it much less overwhelming as well. Now, you probably noticed that I did not choose a color palette and I didn't plan out any colors prior to coloring the page. If you've been watching my videos for quite some time, y'all know I love using color palettes. But when it comes to something like this, and the page is much more intricate and a lot busier, I find it sometimes a little bit easier to use the color wheel as I go along, because you want to just take the page and you want to split the page into sections and you just want to choose what you're going to color next. So I finished coloring this portion of the apple. You need to decide what I want to color next. Do I want to go and color these other apples over here, or do I want to go right into a leaf? Now, I want to show you how to make things contrasting from one another, because after the page comes together as a whole, I want this apple to be the focal point. And by focal point, I mean the object on the page that just really draws the eye in when you look at it, when I look at it, or when somebody else looks at my coloring page. And I also want my page to have some sort of balance. So all of these colors that I have already used, I want to make sure that these colors come into play somewhere else on my page as well. So for instance, because I used the neon yellow as a highlight color over here in the apple, I may want to bring my neon yellow to my leaves and add the neon yellow to the leaves on the rest of the page. And that will help to create some sort of balance, because when your eye looks at it, you can see the neon yellow all in these little spaces here, making this part of the apple really pop, and then it's going to create the balance by being in the leaves as well. This is the color wheel that I always use, and I really, really love, because it's great for beginners. It explains to you exactly what complementary colors are, which are going to create contrast on your coloring pages, split complementary, a triad, which also creates a contrast, and so on and so forth. So here in the center, it's going to show you exactly how to pick your colors. If I'm looking up here at the colors that I used in my apple, they pretty much are in this range here. So to be able to choose contrasting colors, I'm going to go directly across, and so that puts me down in this area here. I can choose to use some teals if I want to. I can use greens. I can mix those teals with the greens, and they're really going to stand out from everything else on the coloring page. And when I come in here and I do all of these little trees that are inside the apple, I'm probably going to want to add some of the colors I used in those leaves as well. So I'm going to show you what some greens would look like on the page and how they really stand out from the colors that I added to the apple. And then, like I said earlier, I really want to be able to use my neon yellow to add to my leaves as well. So when you're looking at your page, you want to be able to split it up into sections to make it a lot less overwhelming. You decide what you're going to color, and you color only that object. So I finished my apple, and now we're going to move to the leaves. And once I color one leaf, I probably want to make sure that I go ahead and color in all the rest of the leaves on the page. And there's so many leaves on this page that most of the page is going to end up already being completed by the time I finish coloring those leaves. So I put some colors together, and I did test them out first over here on my scrap sheet of paper. And I decided to go with some greens that had a little bit more olive in them. And I think I'm going to color these leaves up here because they are closest to the apple. And so that way you can see the difference in the contrast of the colors and how they will end up standing out from one another. So I'm going to start with this one here. And I only chose 3 colors, and I did grab my neon yellow because, like I said earlier, I used my neon yellow in the apple, and so I wanted to be able to choose one of those colors I used in the apple and bring it to the leaves to create that balance on the page. So I'm going to come over here and lay my highlight color down first. And now I have my apple green. So this is the apple green, the neon yellow, and the Prussian green. And I wanted to make the leaves rather easy, rather than having a whole lot of colors in here, making it overwhelming. And I just want to show you, you can create really pretty leaves with just 3 colors. You don't really need any more than that. Now I have my Prussian green, and I'm just going to, again, use these lines as a guide. And this is what makes these books, or this particular book, or anything from Kerby Rosanes, very easy. You don't have to look at it and instantly become overwhelmed. And if you never actually sit down and try it, you'll never know. So you really just need to sit down and tackle one of these pages, because if you just automatically look at one of these books that is a lot busier and has smaller, intricate spaces, and you instantly get overwhelmed and you give up before you've even tried, then what is the fun in it? Now I have my apple green. I'm gonna come in here and add a little bit more of that. And I think it's really gonna pop after I come and add another layer of that neon yellow. But I just really wanted to make this leaf very, very easy. And so I really don't want to use more than 3 colors. I want to show you that. Oh, I need to use my apple green up here. And then my neon yellow. I just wanted to be able to show you that you can totally color one of these pages, and it does not have to be overwhelming. I'll look after I add that neon yellow, how that just pops. Let me add another layer of my darkest color, the Prussian green. Hopefully this has showed you all that you don't have to be afraid to pick up one of these books and just sit down and color and really enjoy yourself. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It could be extremely relaxing. And all you have to do is just follow the lines that are on the artwork. And the trick to making your leaves, or any object, any coloring page for that matter, really pop is making sure that you have a pretty big difference in the values of the colors. And so you can see here by me just coming back and adding more layers and more layers, it's really starting to intensify that shadow, and in turn it's making that highlight pop even more. But y'all, if you have not used your neon colors in your Prismacolor set, mine sat for the longest time and I wasn't using them, and I decided one day, let me just pick them up and see what I could create with them. And I was really amazed by them, and they really make that pop of color and make things really stand out. So I'm just going to color that one leaf, and I want you to be able to see that these two objects on the coloring page, the leaf and the apple, they really stand out from one another. And then I have some of the same colors, well, the neon yellow that I brought from here into the leaf as well, and that's going to help me to create a little bit of balance amongst the entire page. As I continue to move forward on the page, I will just keep doing the same thing that I just showed you throughout this whole entire video. So I will just choose, like I said, what the focal point is. I will start with that. I will make sure I get the whole entire thing colored. In this instance, it was the apple. So I colored the lower part of the apple and the upper part of the apple, because my idea for that is I wanted it to be very fiery red, and I really wanted it to have that pop. So I made sure I added that neon yellow in there. And then, of course, I used my trusty little color wheel over here, and I will have this linked down in the description box below. I love this color wheel, and it teaches you all about color theory over here on the side. It is a really wonderful color wheel, and it makes it very easy for you to choose your colors. But I'm going to continue coloring the rest of the leaves on the page, and as I continue coloring the rest of the leaves, it's going to start to really bring the coloring page together. And then I'll probably go back and do the inside of the apple, and then I'll move on to the trees that are in the apple, because I'm probably going to do the trees that are inside the apple a little bit of a different green than what I did on the leaves, because I really want these little trees here to stand out from what I have going on here in the apple. But sometimes it does help to just sit and talk about your plans for your coloring page out loud, and go over exactly what your thoughts are, and even take a piece of paper and put it off to the side and write down what some of your thoughts are. And always make sure before you apply the colors to your coloring page that you test them out first. And a page like this, or this book, does not necessarily have to be that overwhelming. And Kerby's new book that he just released not too long ago, Mythic World, I really think that that one is probably a lot more busier than this book is. This book here is actually my favorite book by Kerby, because there are a lot of pages in here that don't have as much going on as some of his other books do. So if you were going to choose one of his books, and just one, I would probably start with this one. There's a lot of really inspiring pages in this book. So if you have any questions about anything that you saw in this video, please do leave your questions down in the comments below. If you have a suggestion for any future videos, please also let me know what you would like to see. Everything that you've seen in this video, I will have in the description box so that you can easily find it. I hope y'all have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Happy coloring. Bye.